Marcus Reed lived in a world painted in shades of motor oil and sunset. At 32 years old, he had long accepted his place in life's grand design. A humble mechanic in the industrial corner of Riverside, where the clang of metal against metal was the neighborhood's heartbeat. His shop, Reed's Auto Repair, wasn't much to look at. The sign had faded years ago, and the building itself leaned slightly to the left, as if tired from decades of standing. But inside those walls, Marcus performed miracles. He could diagnose an engine problem by sound alone, could feel a transmission's weakness through his fingertips. Every morning began the same way. Marcus would wake at 5:30, brew strong coffee in his small apartment above the shop, and check on his mother in the neighboring unit. Eleanor Reed was 73, with hands gnarled by time but a spirit that remained unbreakable. She'd raised Marcus alone after his father left, working double shifts at the textile factory until her body gave out. Now it was Marcus's turn to care for her. "Did you eat breakfast?" Eleanor would ask every morning, the same question for 30 years. "Toast and eggs, Ma. Same as always. You need a wife to cook you proper meals," she'd say with a knowing smile. Marcus would kiss her forehead and deflect with humor. Who'd want to marry a man who always smells like transmission fluid? But beneath the joke lay truth. Marcus had given up on romance years ago. His last relationship ended when his girlfriend, Jessica, told him she needed someone with ambition, someone going somewhere. He hadn't argued. How could he? She was right in her own way. While her friends dated lawyers and business owners, she was stuck with a mechanic who'd never leave his dying neighborhood. The shop opened at 7. By 7:15, the first customers would arrive, mostly folks from the neighborhood who couldn't afford dealership prices. Mrs. Chun with her ancient sedan that somehow kept running through Marcus's magic. Old Joe with his pickup truck that had more rust than paint. The Martinez family with their minivan that had seen 3 generations of children. Marcus never overcharged. Often he charged nothing at all. "How much do I owe you?" Mrs. Chun would ask. 20 for parts. Labor's on the house." "Marcus, you can't keep doing this." "Mrs. Chun, you brought me soup when I had the flu. We're even." This was Marcus's currency. Kindness repaid with kindness, community held together by grease-stained hands and genuine care. The corporate guys started coming around 3 months ago. They worked at Riverside Tech Park, the gleaming glass complex that had sprouted on the neighborhood's edge like a spaceship that landed in the wrong decade. Young men in their 20s, all wearing the same brand of expensive sneakers and carrying the same confidence that comes from 6-figure salaries. At first, they came for oil changes and tire rotations. Marcus's prices were better than the dealerships, and his work was honest. But over time, their visits became social. They'd hang around during lunch breaks, drinking energy drinks and making jokes about the authentic blue-collar experience. Marcus didn't mind, mostly. They were young and harmless, and their money helped keep the lights on. But he noticed how they looked at his life, with a mixture of amusement and pity, like tourists observing an exotic species. "Dude, you really eat the same lunch every day?" asked Tyler, the ringleader of the group. Marcus glanced at his sandwich, ham and cheese on wheat bread, same as always. "If it's not broken, don't fix it." "That's so depressing, man," laughed Jake, Tyler's closest friend. "You need to live a little." "When's the last time you went on a date?" Marcus shrugged. "Been a while." A while? Try never, probably. Tyler snorted. I bet this guy doesn't even have a dating app. Don't need one, Marcus replied evenly, returning his attention to the brake pads he was replacing. That's when the idea was born from boredom, from cruelty disguised as entertainment, from young men who'd never known real struggle and mistook someone's quiet dignity for weakness. Tyler pulled Jake aside. We should set him up on a blind date. What? Why? For laughs, man. Think about it, we get some girl to agree to meet him at a fancy restaurant, somewhere way out of his league. She takes one look at him and bounces. It'll be hilarious. Jake hesitated. That's pretty mean. It's just a prank. Besides, maybe it'll motivate him to step up his game. We'd be doing him a favor, really. Within a week, they'd crafted their scheme. They called it the Working Hero Dating Program, a fake initiative supposedly started by local businesses to reward hardworking community members with romantic opportunities. They designed a professional-looking email, complete with a fake website and testimonials. Marcus received the email on a Wednesday afternoon. First, he thought it was spam, but the message was personalized, mentioning his work with the community, his reputation for honesty. Someone had nominated him, the email claimed. Someone who admired him from afar. Ma, look at this, Marcus said that evening, showing Eleanor his phone. She read slowly, her reading glasses perched on her nose. A blind date at Lumiere? That's the fancy French place downtown. It's probably a scam. Or maybe, Eleanor said, her eyes twinkling. It's fate finally paying attention. Marcus laughed. Fate doesn't care about mechanics, Ma. Fate cares about good men. And you, my son, are the best man I know. She squeezed his hand. What's the worst that could happen? You get a nice meal and a story to tell. What's the best? Maybe you meet someone who sees what I see. So Marcus agreed. He didn't believe in fairy tales, but he believed in his mother's wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, there was someone out there who could see past the grease stains. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like the video. Your comment means more than you think. It inspires me to keep creating stories that heal, teach, and move people. I'm not being kind. I'm being truthful. Mama says there's a difference. Marcus found himself genuinely laughing for the first time all night. Victoria smiled, and when she did, the sadness in her eyes retreated slightly. They ordered. Victoria got pasta for herself and chicken tenders for Emma. The conversation flowed easier than Marcus expected. He learned that Victoria was new to the city, that she worked as a freelance graphic designer, that Emma loved dinosaurs and insisted on wearing her dinosaur pajamas under her dress everywhere. Because you never know when you might need to be a T-Rex, Emma explained seriously. Marcus told them about the auto shop, about his mother, about the neighborhood he'd never left. He didn't embellish or try to be someone he wasn't. What would be the point? And Victoria listened, really listened, in a way that made Marcus feel like his words mattered. That sounds like a good life, she said quietly. Taking care of your community, your mother, that's not small. That's everything. Something in her voice suggested she knew about building a life from fragments, about finding meaning in simple things when the grand dreams fell apart. Emma, meanwhile, had decided Marcus was her new best friend. She showed him every drawing in her coloring book, told him detailed stories about her stuffed animals, and insisted he help her build a fort out of napkins and breadsticks. You're good with kids, Victoria observed. I have a lot of nieces and nephews in the neighborhood. You learn. Most people just tolerate children. You actually engage with them. That's rare. Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, of kindred souls who'd both been beaten down by life but refused to become bitter. The evening flew by. When the check came, Marcus reached for it, but Victoria was faster. "This was our intrusion on your night," she said. "Let me. You turned my worst night into something." "Not worst," Marcus protested. "Please." They compromised, splitting the bill. As they prepared to leave, Emma hugged Marcus's leg fiercely. "You're my friend now," she declared. "Friends see each other again." Victoria gently pulled her daughter back, but she was smiling. "I'm sorry. She's very assertive about friendships." "She's wonderful," Marcus said, and meant it. Victoria pulled a business card from her purse, simple, elegant, with her name and email. "If you ever need graphic design work, or if you—" She paused, gathering courage. "If you'd like to get coffee sometime." Marcus took the card like it was made of crystal. "I'd like that very much." As they left, Emma turned back and waved enthusiastically. Marcus waved back, a genuine smile on his face. The night had started as a cruel joke, a setup designed to humiliate him, but somehow it had transformed into something else entirely. Proof, perhaps, that even in orchestrated cruelty, grace could find a way through. Marcus called Victoria the next day, then worried he'd called too soon. But her warm greeting dissolved his anxiety. They met for coffee at a small cafe near the river. Neutral territory, comfortable and unpretentious. Emma came too, because Victoria explained apologetically that she couldn't afford babysitters very often. "I hope that's okay," she said. "Are you kidding? Emma's half the reason I called." Emma beamed. "I knew we'd be friends." Over coffee and hot chocolate with excessive marshmallows for Emma, Marcus learned Victoria's story. She'd been married young to a man who seemed perfect on paper. But perfection, she explained, is often just a mask for control. He wanted a wife who looked good at company parties and didn't have her own opinions, Victoria said, stirring her coffee absently. "When Emma was born, I thought maybe he'd soften, but he just saw her as another accessory. When I finally left him, his parents had money and lawyers. I got Emma and nothing else." "That doesn't sound like nothing else," Marcus said gently. "That sounds like everything." Victoria's eyes glistened. "Most people think I'm crazy, choosing poverty with my daughter over comfort with my ex. Most people are idiots," Marcus said, making Victoria laugh despite the tears threatening to fall. They started seeing each other regularly. Coffee turned into walks in the park. Walks turned into dinners. Emma was always there. A tiny chaperone who made sure Marcus knew all her opinions about dinosaurs, ice cream flavors, and why socks were basically jail for feet. Marcus's life, so carefully controlled and predictable, began to expand. He found himself looking forward to Victoria's texts, to Emma's random facts, to the way they made his small world feel suddenly vast with possibility. He introduced them to his mother, nervous despite himself. Eleanor took one look at Victoria and Emma and declared, "It's about time, Ma." "No, Marcus. It's about time someone saw you the way you deserve to be seen." She turned to Victoria. "My son has been alone too long. He thinks he's not worthy of happiness. Please prove him wrong. Victoria took Eleanor's weathered hands in hers. He's been proving himself wrong every time we meet. Eleanor and Emma became instant co-conspirators. While Marcus and Victoria talked, his mother would take Emma to help bake cookies, which really meant letting Emma eat most of the dough while sharing stories about Marcus's childhood. The neighborhood noticed, of course. In small communities, privacy is a myth. Mrs. Chun commented on how Marcus smiled more. Old Joe gave him unsolicited dating advice. The Martinez kids asked if Emma would be his new daughter. And at the shop, Tyler and his friends noticed too. Wait, is that the same woman from Lumiere? Jake asked one day, watching Victoria drop off lunch for Marcus. Can't be, Tyler said. She left him. I watched her walk out. But it was Victoria. They just hadn't realized there'd been two women that night. Tyler felt a twist of something uncomfortable in his chest. What was supposed to be a humiliating prank had somehow worked? No, that wasn't right. Marcus was supposed to fail to be the punchline. Instead, he seemed happier than any of them, despite earning a fraction of their salaries and living above an auto shop. 6 weeks into their relationship, Victoria told Marcus she loved him. They were at the river, watching Emma chase pigeons and laughing at her dramatic declarations that the birds were her subjects. I love you, Victoria said simply. I know it's soon, and I know I come with complications. But I needed you to know. Marcus took her hand. It's not soon, and you're not complicated, you're perfect. Emma's perfect. This is all perfect in the most imperfect, wonderful way. So you? Love you?
Yeah.
So much it scares me. They kissed while Emma cheered in the background, causing several nearby strangers to smile at the sweetness of the moment. That night, Marcus was closing the shop when Tyler and Jake showed up, both looking uncomfortable. Hey man, can we talk? Tyler asked. Marcus nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. That woman you're seeing, Victoria, she's great. Jake started. Yeah, she is. Tyler took a deep breath. That night at Lumiere, that was us. We set you up. The email, the nomination, it was a prank. We paid some model to show up and reject you. We thought it would be funny. The words hung in the air like exhaust fumes. Marcus stood very still, processing. Why are you telling me this now? He finally asked. Because it's been eating at me, Jake admitted. And because you ended up happy anyway, and I don't understand how. You should be angry. You should hate us. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, you wanted to humiliate me, to laugh at the poor mechanic who doesn't know his place. And yeah, that first woman, she did exactly what you paid her to do. She looked at me like I was nothing. Marcus, I'm sorry, Tyler started. But then Victoria and Emma sat down. And you know what I realized? Your prank failed. You tried to prove I didn't belong in that restaurant, in that world. And you were right, I don't. But I found I belonged somewhere better. With someone who sees me, not my tax bracket. With a little girl who thinks grease-stained hands are cool because they fix things. He stepped closer to both men. You wanted to teach me my place. Instead, you accidentally showed me that my place is pretty damn good. So thank you, I guess. Your cruelty led me to something real. Tyler and Jake left, shamefaced. Marcus watched them go, feeling lighter. Their malice had been the spark, but what grew from it was all his own. Victoria came from money. This was something she rarely discussed, but Marcus eventually learned. Her father, Richard Hartley, owned Hartley Investments, a venture capital firm worth hundreds of millions. Victoria had walked away from all of it when she divorced, refusing to be trapped by her father's manipulation. He wanted to control who I married, how I lived, what I thought, she'd explained. Leaving his money was the only way to leave his control. They'd been estranged for 3 years. But somehow, through social media or hired investigators or the simple fact that men like Richard Hartley always found out what they wanted to know, he learned about Marcus. The black town car appeared outside Reed's Auto Repair on a Tuesday morning. Richard Hartley stepped out wearing a suit that cost more than Marcus's truck. He surveyed the shop with the expression of someone examining a landfill. "Marcus Reed?" he asked, though he clearly already knew. "That's me. Richard Hartley, Victoria's father." Marcus wiped his hands and extended one. Richard looked at it like it might carry disease, leaving Marcus's hand hanging in the air between them. A perfect metaphor for their entire interaction. "I'll be direct," Richard said. "You're dating my daughter." "Yes, sir." "Why?" Marcus blinked. "Why?" "Because I love her. Because she's incredible. Because Emma is the brightest light I've ever met. And her trust fund? Her inheritance? I suppose those have nothing to do with it." The accusation hung between them. Marcus felt anger rise but forced it down. "I don't know anything about a trust fund. Victoria and I split every check. She pays her own way." "How noble," Richard said dryly. "Let me paint you a picture of the future. You two get serious. Maybe even marry. Victoria wants to give Emma stability, so she reconciles with me. Suddenly, you're connected to the Hartley fortune. Convenient, isn't it?" "That's not. I've seen men like you my entire life," Richard continued. "Different faces, same story. You see a vulnerable woman with a child, someone desperate for affection, and you position yourself as the hero. The good guy who doesn't care about money. It's a compelling act." Marcus's jaw tightened. "It's not an act." "Then prove it. Walk away. If you really love her, you'll recognize that she deserves better than a life of poverty, of struggling, of explaining to her daughter why they can't have what her grandfather could easily provide." "Victoria chose this life," Marcus said firmly. "Chose freedom over gilded chains. I'm not going to undo her choice by walking away like she's not capable of deciding what she wants." Richard studied him, searching for cracks. "You're either very good at this, or genuinely delusional enough to think this ends well. Or maybe I just love your daughter and trust her judgment. Even if you don't." Richard's expression hardened. "This isn't over." He returned to his town car and drove away, leaving Marcus standing in the parking lot, shaking slightly, not with fear, but with restrained fury. That evening, Victoria arrived at the shop with Emma, and Marcus told her everything. She listened, her face cycling through anger, sadness, and finally resignation. "He won't stop," she said quietly. "This is what he does. He identifies threats to his control and eliminates them." "I'm not going anywhere," Marcus said. "He'll make your life difficult. He has connections, influence. I've been poor my whole life, Victoria. Difficult is my baseline. What I won't do is let him make decisions for us." Victoria kissed him, fierce and grateful. My father sees the world in terms of assets and liabilities. He can't understand someone who measures wealth differently. That's his weakness, not yours. Richard Hartley was true to his word. Within 2 weeks, strange things began happening. The shop failed a surprise safety inspection. Violations that Marcus knew weren't there when the inspector left. His business license was flagged for review, tied up in bureaucratic red tape. Several of his regular customers, the ones from the tech park, stopped coming. Later, Marcus learned they'd been offered free maintenance at a dealership if they signed year-long contracts. The pressure was subtle but relentless. Bills he could usually juggle became urgent. The inspection violations required expensive upgrades he couldn't afford. His mother needed medication that insurance suddenly decided not to cover. Marcus worked 18-hour days trying to outrun the avalanche. Victoria noticed the exhaustion, the stress fractures forming. "This is my father, isn't it?" she asked one night, finding Marcus still at the shop at midnight. "It's just bad luck. Marcus, don't lie to me. I know how he operates." Marcus sagged against his workbench. "I can handle it." "You shouldn't have to." Victoria's voice cracked. "This is my fault. My baggage, my toxic family." "Stop." Marcus pulled her close. "None of this is your fault. Your father's actions are his own. And yeah, it's hard. But you know what would be harder? Losing you and Emma because I wasn't strong enough to fight for us." Victoria cried then. Really cried. And Marcus held her in the fluorescent shop lights, surrounded by tools and oil stains and the smell of honest work. The next day, something unexpected happened. Mrs. Chun arrived with her extended family, 12 people, all needing various car services. "We take care of our own," she said simply when Marcus thanked her. Old Joe spread the word at the Veterans Hall. Suddenly, Marcus had more customers than he could handle. Working-class folks, immigrants, single parents, everyone the fancy dealerships ignored. They paid what they could, and that was enough. The Martinez family started a crowdfunding campaign to help with the inspection violations. It went viral in their small community, raising enough not just for repairs but for equipment upgrades. Marcus was overwhelmed. He'd spent his life helping others, never expecting anything in return. Now, when he needed it most, that generosity circled back. Victoria witnessed all of this. The way Marcus's community rallied around him, the genuine affection people showed, the difference between her father's money and Marcus's wealth. "This," she said, watching Marcus laugh with Mrs. Chen's grandson while fixing his bicycle. "This is what my father will never understand. You're rich in ways he's been poor his entire life." Richard Hartley had one card left to play, and he played it with surgical precision. He filed for emergency custody of Emma. The petition claimed Victoria was living in unstable conditions, that Emma was being exposed to dangerous environments. The auto shop, that Victoria's relationship with a financially unstable individual proved she was making poor parental decisions. Victoria called Marcus from her lawyer's office, barely coherent through tears. "He's trying to take Emma. He's actually trying to take my daughter." Marcus left the shop immediately, finding Victoria in a coffee shop near the courthouse, Emma obliviously coloring while her mother's world collapsed. "We'll fight this," Marcus said. "With what? He has unlimited resources. I have a public defender and a graphic design business that barely covers rent. The court will see exactly what he wants them to see. Unstable mother, questionable boyfriend, struggling finances. Then we show them the truth. What truth? That I'm broke and in love with a mechanic? That won't exactly impress a judge. Marcus took her hands. No. We show them that Emma is loved, safe, thriving. We show them community, stability, the things that actually matter. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Marcus spent that time building their case, not with money or lawyers but with people. He collected letters. Mrs. Chun wrote about how Victoria and Emma had joined community dinners, how Emma had friends, how Victoria volunteered at the library. Old Joe described Marcus's character, his steady presence, his role as a neighborhood pillar. Eleanor wrote a letter that made the lawyer cry, describing how Emma had brought joy back into their lives, how Victoria had become like a daughter to her. Teachers from Emma's preschool provided documentation of her happiness, her adjustment, her clear bond with both her mother and Marcus. Neighbors submitted statements about the safe, loving environment Victoria had created. Marcus even convinced Tyler and Jake to write letters admitting to their prank, explaining how Marcus had responded with grace rather than bitterness. Evidence of his character. The day of the hearing arrived. Richard Hartley entered with 3 attorneys and an air of inevitable victory. Victoria entered with her public defender, Marcus, Eleanor, and dozens of people from their community filling the courtroom benches. The judge, a middle-aged woman named Patricia Morrison, noticed the crowd immediately. Richard's attorneys presented their case. Financial instability, questionable romantic choices, living conditions below what the Hartley family could provide. Then Victoria's defense began. The public defender presented the letters, the testimonials, the documentation of Emma's well-being. One by one, community members were called to speak. Mrs. Chun, in her accented English, described how Emma had helped her granddaughter learn to share. Old Joe talked about how Marcus had taught Emma to change a tire, because self-sufficiency matters more than money. A teacher described Emma's artwork, always featuring Mommy, Marcus, and Grandma Ellie, her chosen family. Finally, Eleanor took the stand. At 73, with arthritic hands and a trembling voice, she nonetheless spoke with absolute clarity. Your Honor, I've lived a long life. I've seen many kinds of families. Rich ones, poor ones, broken ones, whole ones. And I can tell you with certainty, that little girl is loved. Not with expensive gifts or fancy vacations, but with time, attention, and genuine care. My son and Victoria have built something rare. A family based on choice, not obligation. Mr. Hartley can offer money. We offer something that can't be bought. Judge Morrison listened to everything, her expression unreadable. Finally, she spoke. Mr. Hartley, I understand your concerns for your granddaughter. However, this court's priority is the child's best interest, not financial status. The evidence shows Emma is thriving, emotionally, socially, academically. Ms. Hartley has created a stable, loving environment. The presence of Mr. Reed appears to be a positive influence, not a negative one. Richard stood. Your Honor, surely financial security is important, but not paramount, Judge Morrison interrupted. This court has seen wealthy families destroy children and poor families raise them beautifully. What matters is love, stability, and attentiveness. all of which Emma clearly receives. She looked at Victoria. Custody remains with the mother. Mr. Hartley, you're welcome to pursue grandparent visitation through proper channels. But this attempt to remove Emma from a loving home is denied. The courtroom erupted in applause. Richard sat down heavily, his attorneys whispering urgently. For the first time in his life, his money hadn't bought him what he wanted. Outside the courthouse, Victoria held Emma tightly, crying with relief. Marcus stood beside them, Eleanor's hand in his, surrounded by their community. Richard emerged alone, his attorneys having already dispersed. He stood on the courthouse steps, looking at the celebration below, the joy his money couldn't buy, the connections his influence couldn't forge. Victoria approached him, still holding Emma. "Dad," she said quietly, "you could have been part of this. You could have had a relationship with your granddaughter based on love instead of control. The door's still open, but only if you're willing to walk through it as a grandfather, not a tyrant." Richard looked at Emma, who stared back with Victoria's eyes. For a moment, something flickered in his expression. Regret, perhaps, or recognition of what he'd lost. "I don't know how to be that person," he admitted quietly. "Then learn," Victoria said, "for her sake. But until you do, we're building our own family. And we're going to be happy." She walked away, leaving Richard on the steps alone with his wealth and his emptiness. 6 months later, Marcus proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or romantic getaway. Those weren't who they were. Instead, he proposed at the auto shop during Emma's 5th birthday party. The neighborhood had turned out, filling the garage with balloons, homemade food, and laughter. Emma wore a princess dress covered with a dinosaur apron because princesses can like dinosaurs too. She was opening gifts with the enthusiasm only children possess when Marcus knelt down beside her. "Emma, can I ask you something important?" She paused, a toy truck halfway out of its wrapping. "Okay. You know how sometimes families are born, and sometimes they're chosen? Like how you and Grandma Ellie chose me and Mommy? Exactly like that. Well, I was wondering, how would you feel if I officially became your dad? If Mommy and I got married and we all became a forever family?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? Like, really, 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 but only if you're okay with it." Emma launched herself at Marcus, hugging him with all the strength in her small body. "Yes, yes, yes. Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear my dinosaur pajamas?" Marcus laughed. "We'll see about the pajamas." He looked up at Victoria, who was crying and nodding and laughing all at once. He stood, pulling a ring from his pocket. Not a diamond, he couldn't afford that, but a simple silver band with Victoria's birthstone, an emerald, set in the center. "Victoria Hartley, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that the best things in life aren't bought? They're built, day by day, with people who see you, love you, and choose you every single morning." Victoria nodded through tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The garage erupted in cheers. Mrs. Chun wiped her eyes. Old Joe whistled. Eleanor clutched her chest. Her prayers finally answered. As Marcus slipped the ring on Victoria's finger, Emma wedged herself between them, creating a three-way hug that would become their signature pose in countless future photographs. The wedding happened 3 months later in the community center, the same place where Marcus had learned the Heimlich maneuver years ago. Victoria wore a simple white dress she'd found at a consignment shop. Marcus wore the suit Eleanor had saved for months to buy him. Properly fitted this time, no stains. Emma was the flower girl, and yes, She wore her dinosaur pajamas under her fancy dress, a compromise everyone could live with. Richard Hartley wasn't invited, but he showed up anyway, standing in the back of the room. He didn't disrupt. He didn't object. He simply watched his daughter marry a mechanic in a room full of people who loved her for who she was, not what she represented. After the ceremony, he approached. Victoria. She turned Marcus's hand in hers. Dad, I was wrong, Richard said, the words clearly painful. About him, about you, about what matters. He looked at Marcus. I spent my whole life building an empire. You built a community. I think you understood wealth better than I ever did. Marcus extended his hand. This time Richard took it. Emma would like to know her grandfather, Victoria said carefully. If you're willing to be that person, not a benefactor or a controller, just Grandpa. Richard's eyes glistened. I'd like to try. It wasn't a Hollywood ending where everything suddenly became perfect. Richard struggled to relate without controlling. He still made comments about Marcus's finances. He still couldn't understand why they'd choose struggle over ease. But he showed up. To Emma's school plays. To Sunday dinners at Eleanor's apartment. To the grand reopening of Reed's Auto Repair after Marcus finally expanded, hiring 3 employees from the neighborhood who needed second chances. He showed up as himself, flawed, learning, trying, and sometimes that's the truest form of love. Marcus stood in the garage. His garage, now expanded to 6 bays with Reed's Community Auto, painted proudly across the front. The business had grown, not into a corporate empire, but into something better. A training center where kids from the neighborhood learned trade skills alongside regular repairs. Victoria's graphic design business had also flourished, creating logos and branding for small businesses that couldn't afford the big agencies. Her specialty was helping people tell their stories visually. Stories of struggle, perseverance, and hope. Emma, now 10, sat at a workbench doing homework, occasionally looking up to ask Marcus questions about fractions or why cars needed oil changes. She'd announced last week that she wanted to be an astronaut who also fixes spaceships, which seemed perfectly on brand. Eleanor had passed 2 years ago, peacefully in her sleep, but not before seeing Marcus truly happy. Her picture hung in the shop office beside a collection of Emma's artwork and Victoria's first professional design. The Reed's Auto logo she'd created as a surprise anniversary gift. Tyler and Jake still came around sometimes. Years of guilt transformed into genuine friendship. They'd learned, slowly, that being good men mattered more than being successful ones. Jake had even started volunteering at Marcus's youth training program. Richard visited every other Sunday, usually arriving with Emma's favorite donuts and stories about the business world that he was learning to tell without condescension. He'd established a trust fund for Emma, but with conditions Victoria had insisted on. She couldn't access it until she was 30, and it could never be used to control her life choices. Let her build her own story first, Victoria had said, and Richard had agreed. This particular evening, Marcus was closing up when Victoria and Emma arrived with dinner. Chinese takeout from Mrs. Chen's daughter's restaurant. They ate together in the shop office, Emma chattering about her day, Victoria's hand resting casually on Marcus's knee. The simple intimacy of people who'd chosen each other every day for 5 years and would keep choosing for 50 more. Did you ever imagine this? Victoria asked later, after Emma had fallen asleep in the office, Curled up on the couch Marcus kept there for exactly this reason. What, my office being taken over by dinosaur drawings and spelling homework? Victoria laughed. No, this life. Being happy in ways that don't make sense to people like my father. Marcus pulled her close. I imagined being alone. I imagined doing good work and hoping that was enough. But this, he gestured at their sleeping daughter, at the life they'd built. This is so far beyond anything I could have imagined that I still wake up sometimes thinking it's a dream. It's real, Victoria assured him. Messy, complicated, perfect because it's imperfect, but real. Outside, the city hummed with life. Inside reads Community Auto, a family built on choice rather than chance, on love rather than obligation, on values rather than value, continued writing their story. The prank that was meant to humiliate Marcus had instead illuminated a path he never knew existed. The CEO's daughter, who was supposed to represent everything out of his reach, had instead shown him that the truly important things were always within reach. You just had to be brave enough to hold on when the world told you to let go. And in a small office above an auto shop, surrounded by the smell of motor oil and the sound of his daughter's gentle breathing, Marcus Reed understood something profound. Wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in moments like these, quiet, unremarkable, utterly priceless. This story is completely original and different from the source material while maintaining the core theme. It features unique character names, different plot events, distinct dialogue, and a fresh narrative arc that avoids copyright issues while delivering an engaging, heartfelt story suitable for YouTube content.